welcome to the No Spin News for Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. Stand up for your country. So I got a lot to tell you about. We were off about 10 days, and in the Smart Life segment, I'm going to tell you what I was dealing with, and it directly pertains to your safety, welfare, and situation. So hang in for that. September is going to be a key month for the Trump administration. Lots of stuff in the air, both abroad and here, as you know. And the fall is going to move as fast as the summer, which just vanished before our eyes. Because the world is changing very, very quickly for two reasons. President Trump is an activist president, and he is pushing forth a new economic view for all of us. That's the tariff situation and things like that. And then there is bellicosity, word of the day, bellicosity overseas with Putin, who really is a dangerous character. And so those things are fluid, okay? And Chicago may be the first step for President Trump this season, and that is the subject of this evening's Talking Points Memo. So will Donald Trump bring in the National Guard and other federal authorities to Chicago to control the violence? I think he will. But it's going to cause a major amount of trouble. It's different from D.C. because the federal government runs the District of Columbia, where Chicago is part of the state of Illinois. Illinois has authority, Springfield, over Chicago. But that'll work itself out in the courts. The right thing to do is to stop the murder in Chicago. Let me repeat. I'm the president. I do the right thing. You got to stop the mass killing. The people who run Chicago do not care about stopping the mass killing at all. That's Pritzker, the governor, and Johnson, the mayor. They are ideological people. They live in a bubble of progressive ideology. They are not problem solvers. Okay. So in the last 5 years in Chicago, nearly 4,000 human beings have been murdered. 84% of them black. 4,000. Okay. Now that alone in America, that should never, ever happen. Over this Labor Day weekend, ready for these stats? Okay. 61 people in Chicago were shot. 61. 9 dead, 52 injured. Any arrests for any of the 61 shootings? No, not one arrest. Nobody got arrested. Now this is, when you say, well, where are the police? The system to protect Chicagoans who are vulnerable has collapsed. There is no order in the poor neighborhoods of Chicago. None. And if you are a killer, you will get away with murder. There's a million reasons why. Police department is undermanned. The city council undermines punishment. It goes on and on and on and on. It's a lot. Same here in New York, where I am. Same in LA, San Francisco. It's all progressive stuff. But the fact remains that you have people being gunned down on a daily basis, and the politicians won't stop it. So who's going to stop it? So on July 23rd, 2020, 5 years ago, here's what I said. Go.
You stop it by moving in the National Guard. That's how you stop it. Now, you don't have to keep them there forever, but you reorganize your policing in those neighborhoods. And once the Guard is there, the people will feel protected and come forward, and maybe you get a coalition of religious people and civic people, and they put pressure. Everybody knows who these drug gangs are. It's like they don't know them. They know.
Okay, that was 5 years ago. Nothing was done. So because it was Biden. You know, Trump had a little window, but he chose not to do it. I discussed this with President Trump in his first term. Okay, he asked my opinion about it, and I gave it to him. There it was. And Biden couldn't care less. He didn't even, know anything. So, Trump deployed the National Guard in D.C., another chaotic mess, on August 11th. Here's what happened. So far, about 1,500 arrests, okay? 156 illegal guns seized. Year-to-date comparisons since the National Guard went in, 40% drop in violent crime. 40%. 82% drop in carjackings. 11% drop in property crime. Even the progressive mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser, says, hey, this has worked. The Washingtonians are more protected and feel safer. And it's the truth. Now, you won't hear the truth from the Washington Post or and most of the television networks. No, they're not going to say that. They're going to say Trump's a fascist, he's a dictator, the same old garbage. Okay, so what has to happen now is a message. And I think President Trump's going to send a message that if you are an elected official anywhere in this country and you put your own people in danger, the federal government's going to step in and protect those people. Roll the tape.
Either you support the Constitution or you do not. And this president has literally trampled on the sensibility of what our democracy is all about. And so, the city of Chicago, I can tell you this emphatically, we are not going to accept nor are we calling for the occupation of our city by federal troops.
There are people who live in our communities. There are neighbors. There are friends. And we now have a president and a federal government that's going after them, hunting people down and disappearing them off the streets. Men with masks are grabbing people off the streets and taking them away. And that's just shameful.
Okay. So those are the two that are responsible for the chaos. Pritzker is talking about, of course, ICE agents, because they will accompany the National Guard in there, because some of the violent criminals in Chicago, as with every other city, are illegal migrants. But you have two men who simply saying, we're just not going to do it. Okay. If Mayor Johnson interferes in any way with Donald Trump and the federal government's intrusion, because it is, into Chicago, have him arrested. Arrest him. Now, maybe Johnson wants to get arrested. Maybe he wants to be a martyr. Okay? But again, this is about sending a message. Pritzker, he's too shrewd to do that. Okay? He's going to try to parlay this, like Newsom, same thing, into a presidential run. That's what he's trying to do. All right, so summing up, this situation in Chicago should have been dealt with 5 years ago when I said what I said about the National Guard. It was ignored, okay, by Biden administration. And now there are what? Another 2,300 dead or what? I mean, it's staggering. And the poor people in Chicago, they're never going to rise up. They're never going to support Trump because they are brainwashed. They live in a bubble. They can't step back and see the destruction that these progressives are heaping upon their own neighborhoods and their own families. And that's the memo. All right, a judge in L.A. has ruled that Trump sending the National Guard to protect Angelenos was unconstitutional. This is no surprise. This lawsuit was filed by Gavin Newsom, governor of California. The judge is Charles Breyer, 83 years old, appointed by Bill Clinton. Everybody knew that this guy was going to say that. He stayed the ruling until an appeals court can look at it, of course. This doesn't mean anything. Supreme Court's going to have to deal with it sooner or later. But if you really objectively look at the LA situation, National Guard protected people there from rioters who were violent and paid. Those rioters were paid by progressive groups. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And the organizers were. We don't talk enough about those truly making a positive impact. So let's take a moment to discuss Delta Rescue. the world's largest no-kill care for life animal sanctuary, home to more than 1,500 rescued animals. It is staffed by trained specialists who provide lifelong care, love, and safety. They do incredible work. But look, it's important to remember that Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions from us. I have donated, and so should you. Their founder, Leo Grillo, built a legacy of dedication and everlasting love for animals. So consider making it a part of your legacy too. Talk with an estate planner. Check out the estate planning tab at deltarescue.org. You can make a difference, even get potential tax benefits. So please visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. deltarescue.org. So joining us now from New York City is the Republican contender for mayor, Curtis Sliwa. You know him. I don't have to introduce him. Spent his whole life in the city fighting crime and doing good things on balance, I would say. I know Curtis for a long time. So I took care of Mandami. You don't have to bother with him. But I got 5 issues here. I want to know exactly what you would do if you do get elected mayor. The first one is no bail. So Albany, the capital of the state, has basically passed a law that says judges have very little discretion in assigning bail to violent criminals. And there's a whole list of this one. You can't have any bail. How does a mayor overcome that?
Well, number one, that's all due to Andrew Cuomo, 2019. No cash bail, and he's doubled down on that in wanting to somehow resurrect his political career and become mayor. That will haunt us. What you have to be able to do is pinpoint the judges who are not utilizing any judicial control and hiding behind the no cash bail, and you got to name them and shame them. That's not happening whatsoever. And then, more importantly, you have to hearken back to what was the 1-2 punch. When Rudy Giuliani beat David Dinkins, the crime rate was far more horrific. 2,100 murders a year, 10,000 unsolved shootings. He barely beat Dinkins the second time that he challenged him. And then quickly thereafter, a man that nobody knew, unseated, a man who many thought was an iconic figure in the Democratic Party, Mario Cuomo, the father of Andrew Cuomo now. With that 1-2 punch, you can make all the difference in the world. So if I get elected, and I intend on getting elected, I pave the way for Elise Stefanik to beat Kathy Hochul, because if Elise can get 33-34% of the vote in the city in the next election, then you'll have a Republican mayor and a Republican governor who can go to work on both the city council that is predominantly progressive and the state legislature that is predominantly progressive.
All right. It's a big if, but it makes sense. Most of the crime in New York City on the street.
There's also one other thing, Bill, real quickly. The mayor does get to appoint some of the judges, obviously.
Obviously you wouldn't
have them to leave.
And we know the judges are the problem, but just exposing them, these people have no shame, and you know that. They don't care. Most of the street crime in New York City is committed by drug addicts who need money to buy whatever they're using and killing themselves with. They're allowed to run wild, set up tents, live on the street, inject narcotics in front of children, degrade public safety. It's horrendous. Same thing's happening in most progressive cities. What would you do with these drug addicts?
A quality of life that everybody is exposed to, it doesn't matter, the subways, brings everybody together. So if you don't see it in your neighborhood, you're eventually going to see it on the subway. They must be removed. For their
remove
own,
where, though? Where are you going to remove them?
Well, number one, there are state hospitals that have plenty of empty space. Unfortunately, when Andrew Cuomo fled to Albany because he was going to be impeached, he had downsized the number of state beds available for people with mental health disorders and drug addiction disorders.
Do you force them, though? Okay. There are enough facilities in New York State. It's a big state to put these people in, but most of them don't want rehab. They don't want to go there. How do you get them there?
Right. Well, you don't have harm reduction clinics that provide the addict not only with the needles, but with a nurse to properly inject them which then destroys the fabric of the quality of life in that neighborhood because everybody who's a drug user comes in there. I mean, if you're going to go to that step, you might as well give them the drugs for free because all it does is bring the drug dealers into a location as if they were vendors at Yankee Stadium.
No,
and they're
all of that
selling
is
it in
right. But again, the question remains, you know what the problem is, I know what the problem is. But if you try to forcibly remove drug-addicted people from the city, you're going to run into the ACLU, you're going to run into Albany legislature. How do you get around that?
You have 1,000 lawyers on corporation counsel that we pay, and all they do is settle lawsuits. You're going to go into court. You're going to battle the civil libertarian group. You're going to battle legal aid. You're going to battle everybody who practices the art of I sue. You're going to win some. You're going to lose some. But you see, the taxpayers are going to know that you got their back. And if somebody is out there and they're involved in drug trafficking and drug use, you got to lock them up. Because time and time again, men and women who have had serious drug issues have said they've been able to dry out in prison. And then you got to make sure that they have proper rehab so that
okay, but you can't put them in prison because that doesn't fall under the bail thing. I mean, if you could isolate them for a few days, that would improve the problem because then they can't get their drugs. All right, the third one is there are thousands of migrants who come into the country illegally, get on a bus, and come to New York City. How is Mayor Sliwa going to stop that?
Well, number one, we have a number of migrants who are an integral part of the business of New York City. You start doing ICE raids in the back rooms of every restaurant in New York City, they're out of business. You start doing ICE raids in the hotel and the accommodation industry, they're out of business. You got to give them a vehicle. And President Trump has talked about that from time to time. They need a special vehicle to be able to stay and do the work that my three sons will not do, and this generation of millennials and Gen Zs are not going to do. It's very easy
All right,
for
so
us
you would make it
everyone.
easier, but again, that's a federal duty, not a city or state duty. And I'm not sure Donald Trump, he may do it, but it would take a while. So when they flood in here and look at Queens, they've taken over blocks, set up brothels, set up drug dens, set up this and that. And the city of New York doesn't cooperate with ICE. Now, I know you would. You'd write an executive order that says, all the NYPD have got to alert ICE. That would be a big step, but then the city council is going to undermine you on that.
Well, also, you invite in FBI Director Patel, because a lot of it is done by the narco terrorists who are also engaged in sex trafficking. You close those locations down. You go after the absentee landlords. They're allowing their buildings to be utilized for this trafficking, the pimps and the madams, and the people who benefit. And to the ladies who have been procured for this business, you see if you can get them back on track. But there is a way to stop this activity that is being fueled by these narco terrorists and these cartels. Now, the president has announced he wants to go to war against the cartels. This is one clear way of doing it, and I would be fully cooperative with the president and his agencies in vetting them out of New York City, where they are having
and that's what
direct impact on crime.
That's what got your rival, Eric Adams, a pass from being prosecuted. He promised to do that, but I don't know if he's done it or not. The city is filthy.
Well, to be honest, you have to deal with Tom Homan and ICE.
No, I know that, and I know you would. The city is filthy. You know the city as well as any human being on earth. I'm second. The city's filthy. How are you going to clean it up?
You set it up by working with the existing agencies. You free up the police, especially with coming.
The police aren't going to sweep up the. What's wrong with the Department of Sanitation in New York City? Why are garbage cans overflowing? Why are rats running all over the place? Why is this happening?
Why it's happened? Because we've allowed the unions too much control over the workday of their men and women. So, perfect example, sanitation department, once they're finished their route of picking up the trash, they go back to what they call the barn, and they wait around until their 8 hours is finished. Used to be when I was a kid and you were a kid, Bill, the sanitation department had brooms on the front of the truck. They would have to clear off all the sewers and the catch basins, and they would have to do proper maintenance. Now that they no longer do it, we have these business improvement districts which exhibit an additional tax on the local merchants, driving them out of existence because now they're paying the normal tax, corporate tax rate, they're paying property tax, and now they have to pay a special business
But
improvement
how
tax.
do you convince the unions to do a better job? They obviously don't want their people working as hard as their people could work.
Well, you have to bring this to the attention of the people. They're paying for the service. They're entitled to the
people
service.
know it. All right, last question.
They know it.
Last
but the
question.
mayor has never actually brought it to their attention of how much is being paid and how little service is being done. Look, the previous sanitation commissioner, Jessica Tisch, took half the cans away from the corners where you would put the trash. They've taken the cans out of the subways with the idea that somehow you're going to carry the trash up to the street. These are not common sense solutions.
No, they're not.
And we have
All right,
to,
last question. One of the primary reason Mamdani is leading in the polls is the cost of living in New York. The most expensive cities in the world, younger people, and that comprises most of his voters, they say, I can't make it in New York. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, but I can't make it here. Everything is too expensive. Can a mayor drive down costs?
Oh, absolutely. Number one, you have to move to start slashing the taxes, the personal income tax, the corporate tax, and then the property tax. And then there's a trickle-down effect. And then you have all the hidden taxes. You have speed cameras everywhere, which is just meant to pick your pocket. Fees and fines that drive you almost to the verge of bankruptcy each month. And then you have to reach out to the millennials and Gen Zers and said, we made you a promise. If you got a 4-year education, 2 years of graduate school, you were a CPA, a financial analyst, or a lawyer making $150,000 to start, they say, well, why am I still living in an apartment with 3 or 4 other roommates? It's like I'm back in college in a dormitory. And you have to say there are 100,000 apartments that are warehoused out there, Bill, leading with 6,000 in NYCHA projects alone. We've got to free up those locations to put them out in the marketplace, meet with the landlords, and find out specifically what their needs are. And generally, it comes to tenant-landlord court. The landlords have no rights in tenant-landlord court. You have men and women who have been squatting in their apartments since the lockdown and pandemic, 6-7 years, and
That's
nothing
true.
happens. In City Hall,
I don't know if the landlords, though, are going to help you out on that one. But anyway, Curtis, if you get elected, you're going to be busy. I think you know that. The city is really, really on the cliff. And thanks for appearing today. Good luck. We'll check in with you before the election. What if you could delay your next 2 mortgage payments? Imagine putting those 2 payments in your pocket and finally getting some breathing room. It is possible when you call American Financing. If you're feeling stretched by everyday expenses, you're not alone. American Financing can show you how to use your home's equity to pay off debt. Please call American Financing today before the problem gets worse. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are helping homeowners just like you restructure their loans and consolidate debt, all without upfront fees. Their customers save an average of $800 a month. It's fast, simple, and it could save your budget this summer. Please call now before it's too late. American Financing, 888-462-9557. 888-462-9557. AmericanFinancing.net/bill. Cold and flu season coming on up. We all know it. And it really is nothing to take lightly. So when people start getting sick all across the country, medications disappear. Everybody wants it at the same time. So it's very, very smart to have a pharmacy you can count on, like All Family Pharmacy. Right now, they're helping Americans get ahead of the curve with 10% off antibiotics, antivirals, other essentials. You know how important it is to have the right meds when you get sick, particularly when your kids get sick. You don't want to be going into the doctor's office, spending all the time. You want to have them at your home. So if you have a few months' supply, you don't have to worry. And that's what we're doing here. If you believe in medical freedom, okay, and taking care of your family as I do, this is the pharmacy for you. Please go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Bill. Use code BILL10 to save 10%. All right, final thought of the day. As mentioned, 1 week, Confronting Evil hits the marketplace. Hope it's a big book. We're looking for 20 number one bestsellers. We got 19 now. Hope you pre-order it. Hope you go to BillO'Reilly.com. And if you do, we'll give you a free fun gift. But Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anything's ready. So I sent a young viewer of the No Spin News an advanced copy of Confronting Evil. Let's see what she has done with it. Seems to be engrossed. Very, very smart little girl. Yeah, I think she just read the Putin chapter. I think that's what that is. So we appreciate the younger readers getting into Confronting Evil again. Pre-order it. It'll be there, out in 1 week. You'll get it first. And that is it for us today. Thank you very much for watching and listening to the No Spin News. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you for watching. To view full episodes of the No Spin News anytime, sign up to become a BillO'Reilly.com premium or concierge member today.